Henry Kissinger, just very briefly, is a man who's been a front man for this Illuminati for a long, long time, back into the 60s. He was a major manipulator. He was a neocon before they even termed the phrase neocons. And he also connects into people like Richard Pearl, James Woolsey, the former head of the CIA, who's on that defense policy board like Pearl and stuff. They all connect in together. But this is the ultimate neocon of the last 30, 40 years. That is, of course, a horrible picture, so let's change it. I don't know why I did that, but... yeah, it's horrible. They must be the nose pickers, because I found that as well. It's just kind of strange people, aren't they? They're ruling us, you know. Why seek the star when you are the star? What I want to do in this last section, I'm going to go into real bizarre areas now, and anyone that thinks that I'm mad is going to have it fully confirmed in their belief system, because it's kind of funny. Yeah, I mean, in this crazy world, if they don't consider you mad, then you have no confirmation of your own sanity, do you? Imagine if this crazy world thought you were sane. Oh my God, worst nightmare. And in this section, I wanted to talk about some of the aspects of this matrix, this mind prison that we actually live in, and how we create it, and how it's manipulated so that our reality becomes the reality the manipulators want us to have because it suits their agenda. And part of that is realizing that we are not physical bodies, whether they're black, white, or sky blue, pink. That's not what we are. That's a vehicle to experience this reality. We are consciousness, infinite consciousness that never dies. The word does not exist in consciousness. And therefore, if we consider ourselves to be physical people, there is no David Icke. David Icke is just the name for an experience infinite consciousness is having in this reality. That's all it is. It's just an experience. And if we start identifying with David Icke and Joe Bloggs, we get pulled into seeing ourselves as little insignificant people. Oh, I'm just Joe Public, I am, what can I do? And that's why we're constantly pushed into that disconnected state where we identify who we are with what we're doing. People, it's kind of funny, isn't it? Where people identify who they are with their job. They say, like, what are you? Oh, I'm a coal miner. I sweep the streets. I'm an airline pilot. I actually am in the City of London. And then we kind of judge who they are, and they judge who they are by what they're doing. It's just an experience. That's all it is. I mean, how many people go up to someone and they say, hey, hello, nice to meet you. Who are you? And you say, I'm everything that exists. Nice to meet you. We don't do that. And in a sane and enlightened world, the other guy would say, hey, yes, so am I. Thought I recognized you. The divisions are there to divide us. So I want to go into all that and many other things, and many other bizarre things. Interesting thing, the question that I started to ask is, because I realized after a few years of this, that there was some other dimensional connection here. Not just talking to people on the inside, but many other different people, people who had been involved in the mind control projects and saw some of this stuff from the inside. So my question was, who controls the controllers? Because it's a real hierarchical thing, and eventually it goes out of this dimension. And the thing to remember is that we don't live in a world. This is the kind of information I'm talking about in this last section, which has been fundamental to the manipulation of the human race, the suppression of it, because it is the means by which we understand who we are, how we create a reality we like or don't like, and how we can change it to another one. Holds us in the matrix. When we look through our eyes, we don't see a world we think we do. All we're seeing is a frequency range that our five senses can access. And it's a very, very narrow one. Outside of that frequency range that we can access is infinity, an infinity of possibility and experience and places of existence. And we're just seeing a fraction. Basically, it's like having a radio and you tune it to radio 1. And what you get then is radio 1. You don't get radio 2, 3, and 4. And yet all those radio stations, broadcast frequencies, are existing in the same space, just as all existence and all these other dimensions of existence exist in the same space that we're occupying. But the radio is tuned to radio 1, so that's what you get. You move it to radio 2, now you've got radio 2. Radio 1 hasn't stopped broadcasting because you've moved from it, it's just that you're not accessing it anymore. And it's the same with our experience in this illusion we call the physical world. When we take on physical form, we are locking ourselves into this reality. Therefore, that's what we experience, this frequency range. You get cats and other animals who have a greater visual frequency range, and what they do is they're reacting to empty space in the room, and you're going, what's wrong with the bloody cat? It's going like that. But to the cat, greater visual access of frequency range, that is not empty space, although it appears to be to us. People talk about the UFOs. I saw this UFO and it disappeared in front of my eyes. Like, what are you on? You're mad. No, it hasn't actually disappeared. It has left the frequency range of the 5 senses, therefore it appears to disappear. That is all. It's all about frequency and whether you're tuned to it. And I started to realize, in fact, as more and more is being identified, only 1% or less than 1% of identifiable mass matter in this universe we can actually see with our 5 senses. And yet we are so locked into the conditioning, this is reality, that when you're talking about anything that is beyond what is accepted to exist, you're mad, you're on something. And yet, hold on a minute, we can't see 99% of what is known to exist. What? We open our minds to all possibility. It's like Socrates, the Greek philosopher, said, wisdom is knowing how little we know. That holds your mind open. Not that you accept anything, any old crap, but it holds your mind open to possibility instead of dismissing things just because they're different. Bloody hell, I'm going to get into some different things in this section. Let's start. One of the things that's been kind of thrown at me, dismiss him, he says reptiles run the world, you're mad. Well, I have a simple philosophy. I follow information. If you try to uncover what's going on in the world with a belief system, whether it's a religious belief system or whether it's a rigid one, or whether it's a political belief system or whatever, anything like that, then you might as well just go and have a cup of tea. Because what's going on in the world is so different to what we think is going on that if you have a belief system to defend, and also if you have an ego to defend, hey, what will people think of me, then you're dead in the water, because you will not go into areas that this information takes you, because your belief system will edit them out. Not going there, my belief system's under pressure if I do. I just follow information. And I got to the point in about the mid-late 90s, when I'm working on how the 5 sense world, you might say, is manipulated, and the structures and all this stuff, where I started running into a very strange theme. And that is of people who, of all walks of life, I mean, I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of these people all around the world now, who told me how they saw a person, often in positions of power, but not always, turn into a reptilian-type form in front of their eyes and then move back again. What's become known throughout history as shape-shifting and all that stuff. Morphing is the modern word for it, apparently, that people are using. And it's like when you first hear someone say that, you're going, what? And then another one tells you, and it's like, what, but not quite so pronounced. And when this theme comes, there was one period in America in about 1997 when I met 12 different people in different parts of America. I was traveling a lot, in 15 days, who told me the same basic story. And I talked then to people in some of the mind control projects, not looking for these stories, but I just walked into them. And this book, Transformation of America, is written by a mind-controlled slave of the CIA from when she was a kid in the 50s right the way through to the late 1980s, called Kathy O'Brien. And when I'm starting to get this reptilian thing, I'm thinking, I'm sure she talks about reptilians in her book. So I went back to the book, flicking through, feeling a right prat, looking under the index for reptilian, and I found about 3 or 4 references. And what she says was, and this is a book that names Cheney and Father George Bush and a stream of people in America as child abusers and what have you, and She sent copies to members of Congress, to all the media back in the early 90s when it came out. No reaction, nothing from any of the people. Just go away. Don't want to go there, because if we go to court, then the whole thing will come out. Don't want to go there. Shut up, ignore it. Anyway, I'm looking through this, and she was talking, and understandably, what she did when she had these experiences was she explained them away as part of the mind program. They're just trying to manipulate my mind and confuse me. But what she said was, she met one of the people that she was a slave to was Father George Bush during the Reagan administration. And she said that he told her they were a, quote, extraterrestrial race that from another plane of existence that had taken the world over, and no one noticed because they looked human. And she said that Bush turned in front of her eyes into a reptilian type form, just this part of him, and then went back again. And she thought it's just part of the confusion. And then she tells in the book as well as how she went to Mexico, where she was put under the authority for a while of Miguel de la Madrid, who was president of Mexico. And she says in the book how he told her the story of what he called the iguana race. And he said what happened is that they were a non-human reptilian race, humanoid race, that came to this planet and interbred with humans in the far ancient world to create hybrid bloodlines through which they could manipulate the world. And he said, quoting her, perfect for world leaders. And she said that he told her that these particular hybrid bloodlines could take either human or reptilian form and move between the two. He also, she said, changed into a reptilian form in front of her eyes. Now what she was saying that was just, it's not real, it's just a mind control project, is exactly what these people all over the world from all these different walks of life, I mean people in the banking system and power dressing business women and stuff like that, have had this experience. Talking of that, I had to bloody laugh really, but I met this lady in Canada who said to me, she ran a company in Vancouver, and she came to one of my talks and said, I've got to meet you because I know it's, you know, people laugh at you, but I know it's what you're saying is true. And she told me the story of how she had this experience with this guy. She said he had a real dark side, which he said he was trying to work with and understood was there. She said, and they came back in the late 90s to a house, and they went into a bedroom to have sex, right? And just above her bed, she says, is the biggest secret, which is the first time that I started writing about this stuff. And she said this guy took an immediate aversion to this book and started saying, that's some bloody nonsense, what are you having that for? It's rubbish, do you want to read that crap? That sort of stuff. She's thinking, hold on, it's just a book. So anyway, they start having sex, and she said he started getting really, really rough. And she said, I had my hand on his back, and I looked up at him. She said, and this guy started transforming into a reptilian form. Now, what made me bloody laugh, because it's so sodding bizarre, is she said, I then felt my hand going back. And she said, I looked round, and he was sprouting a sodding tail, right? She said, I threw him off and screamed, and he morphed back to human form. I threw him out the house, never seen him again. Now, bizarre as that may sound, and my God, it is from this reality that we have, I've heard these stories in other countries where people have talked about the same basic experience. And how amazing. We have a tremendous reptilian genetics anyway, because there are still people around the world with tails. I mean, you can feel here where the tail used to be, going way back. And in Western medicine, they call them caudal appendages. And they whip them off at birth, and that's it. But in other parts of the world where they don't have those facilities, there's still people with tails. They come to light from time to time in the press, because it's just that a DNA code that should be closed at this point opens for some reason in those people, and it manifests a physical trait. So more and more of these stories started coming, and I'm thinking, shit, you know, what's going on here? And then I come back to England, and I meet a lady who tells me that she is a friend of a close associate of Princess Diana. And I haven't gone public by the time I've met her with this stuff, not written any books on it. I'm just trying to work out what the hell is happening. And I met her. This was a lady who was a close confidant of Princess Diana for 9 years and was acknowledged as such in the tabloid media, a lady called Christine Fitzgerald. And she came over to talk to me about what I thought the Windsors and the way they treated Diana, which was appalling. And we're in this conversation, and I'm listening, and she said, by the way, do you know what Diana used to call the Windsors? And I said, no. She says she used to call them the reptiles and the lizards, and she used to say that they weren't human. And I'm thinking, shit, not more frickin' reptiles. I mean, I'm thinking, shit, I'm going to have to talk about this if this goes on, and my God, hey, it's going to be a laugh, isn't it? And I said, what? I said, what do you mean, reptiles? I'm like playing the idiot, because she didn't know that this had come into my research. And she said, yeah, you know that the Windsors are a human-reptilian hybrid bloodline. And this is what the aristocracy and the royal families are. That's why they, right back into the ancient world, they said they had the right to rule because of their bloodline, because of their DNA, because of their genetic connection to what were perceived as the gods. So what I did, I started looking back in all these bloody ancient texts and stuff, and I started finding in the ancient accounts references, many of them, to shape-shifting reptilian human entities that could move between a reptilian and human form. Back in Asia, they had a group of people they called the Nagas that could do that. And then I went in to talk to my great friend Creda Mutwa, the shaman down in South Africa, and he started telling me all about this whole thing from their perspective, what he's been initiated into. Not only have people reported in large numbers to me seeing this process of this morphing from a human to a reptilian form and then back again, they've also seen like ethereal reptilian forms following people around and locking into these lower chakra points, these vortex points that connect the different levels of us with the physical. So I go and see Creda Mutwa. He's on the left, by the way. And this man is an absolute freaking genius. I mean, he is a library on legs, this man. What happened is, I went to talk in South Africa just after The Biggest Secret came out, and he contacted me through a third party and wanted to speak to me. So I went to see him, and I spent hours and hours, days in fact, with him. And what he said, he asked me first of all, is how do you know about the Chitahuri? I said, well, I just come into my life, and people have told me these stories. He said, what's in your book, I was initiated into kind of 40, 50 years ago. The true history of Black Africa and the true history of the world. He said, we call your reptilians the Chitahuri, which translates as the children of the serpent or the children of the python. He said, they are the ones that run the world. But people don't realize it because they look human. And again, you find this recurring theme, bizarre as it is, on the face of it. What was this bloody paper? Some paper was trying to take the piss out of me, and put this on the front page, and that's quite good actually, because it gives me a nice little image. And of course, it's not like physical. It's this reptilian race appear to operate, from what I can gather, just outside the frequency range of the five senses. And sometimes people can extend their visual frequency range into that range of these entities and see them, sometimes briefly, and other times they move their frequency into ours and you can see them briefly and then they've gone. So the more that I've understood, interestingly, that's what they gave British troops to train with before they went out to Iraq. I thought that was quite bizarre, really. So the question I started to ask, and the question I started to ask, and what lots of people have asked, understandably, it's very, very relevant, is this: if this manipulation has been going on for thousands and thousands of years, why would people all that time ago give their lives to advancing this agenda if they weren't going to be around when it all transpired where it was all heading, which is the centralized control of the planet. Well, how about if there are entities which don't always take a reptilian form, but it's a massively common theme, that actually operate on levels of frequency just outside this one, which have a different relationship to time that we have, and they come in and out of our timeline through this period of time, just occupying certain human physical bodies to manipulate this dimension from just outside of its frequency range. And what if certain bloodlines had a DNA resonance which made that easier than the general run of the population? And so if you could manipulate these particular bloodlines into positions of power, what you're actually doing is putting the vehicle for these entities into the positions of power. Talking to insiders of this, particularly in America, looking at some of the ancient accounts, talking to people like Credo Mutwa, talking to the people who have experienced this, this seems to be basically what's going on. And because when we look at these people, what do we look at them with? We look at them with the five senses. Therefore, what we see is their five-sense human level. Hey, they're human, don't be stupid. But what's just beyond that? Controlling and animating the emotional and mental processes of these particular people. One of the things that I've found studying this over the years is that this idea of the eyes of the window on the soul is very, very true. And one of the things that I've found is that those that are possessed, that's the word I guess would use, by these entities, they have an emotionless look in the eye, in the sense that no matter what their face is doing, it might be smiling widely and all this stuff, the eyes never change. There's always this cold stare no matter what this is doing. And again, this is repeated to me by people who've experienced them. So this was painted by Credo Mutwa from ancient and modern accounts of this Chittahuri, and there seems to be many kind of different species of them, but the eyes, the piercing eyes, the evil eye, maybe that came from, is a common theme. So what is actually behind some of these people? That's the question. Because you know, whatever, there is something that connects these people so fundamentally to this agenda, and they are all people who do not have the ability to empathize with the victims of their actions. See, we have an emotional fail-safe mechanism whereby we feel empathy with people. Therefore, the thought of cluster bombing a child, we simply could not go there. What? The empathy stops us. If you don't have that empathy, there is no fail-safe mechanism. Anything goes. And with the people running this show, anything goes. And what I'm told, I'm just a kind of journalist really passing this on. There's so many questions I've got to ask about this, is that there is it's described to me by insiders as a corruption of the DNA, but what it is, it's just a different trait. And it can be very, very subtle, because the difference in DNA between a house mouse and a human ain't that great compared with the amazing difference in physical traits and characteristics. There is something in the DNA, they say, that makes this possession easier, and that's why they want to hold the DNA corruption by constantly interbreeding with each other, because once you start breeding outside of it, it starts to dilute very quickly and become inoperative. Now, I didn't know till I started looking at this that actually the most ancient part of the human brain is known by scientists as the R complex, the reptilian brain. I never knew that. Because of our reptilian history. We have tremendous reptilian genetics going way back. And what scientists say, I'm talking mainstream ones here, is the characteristics we get from that reptilian part of the brain, which we all have, is a obsession with ritual. Not just sacrificial ritual, but ritualistic behavior, going to the same supermarket at the same time every week, circular repeating behavior over and over again. They say that we get a cold-bloodedness from the reptilian brain, where we do things without any care of the consequences for those that suffer from our actions. That we get a desire for hierarchical, top-down power over structures of control from the reptilian brain. And many other of these traits, which, whether people accept the reptilian thing, and it don't matter to me, are the traits of the Illuminati. Now, in other people, they are balanced out by other parts of the being. But if you are really into the control by the reptilian brain, you are far more likely to express these traits of the reptilian brain more than the general population. What happened as this research went along is that I came across this lady, Giuliana Conforto, who's trained as a physicist, and she contacted me. She's an Italian. She wrote this brilliant book, Man's Cosmic Game, which takes the so-called paranormal and explains it in very simple scientific terms. And she contacted me, and she said, do you know that between dimensions there is like a neutral zone, which she called the interspace plane. It doesn't have an energy source like a dimension. It's almost like a little crevice between it, a neutral zone, between one and the other. She said, I think that's where your reptilians are, in that neutral zone, because it's a place, right the way through history, going way back, there is this folklore recurring of entities that manipulate human life from these other planes of existence. So I called Credo Mutwa and I said, look, this lady's been on telling me that there are these interspace planes between dimensions, and she says she thinks that that's where these entities could be. I said to him, does this exist in your culture? Oh yes, he said. In our culture we call them the heaven between heavens. And he said that's where the reptilians are, in this little crevice between dimensions, and they manipulate this world by working through physical bodies in this so-called physical five-sense world. And this is just a thing I picked up off the internet, just to kind of symbolize, it's very well symbolized with the Freemasonic floor, this interspace plane between dimensions. And what she said was that Giovanni Conforto, that they don't have an energy source like a dimension, so they need to create one. And so it's not only that behind the scenes that the world is manipulated by one force working through two, it's actually even outside of this dimension of existence, this manipulation goes on. And there's a reason they're looking for. So what seems to be the situation, and take it or leave it, it's just information, bizarre as it looks, is that in this interspace plane are these entities, not just reptilian, but other kind of entities that manipulate into this dimension through possession, which of course is a theme of history. And they possess certain bloodlines. Now those Illuminati bloodlines that I've been talking about coming out of the Near and Middle East, they're not the only ones. They exist in China and all over the world. The ancient emperors of China claimed the right to be emperor because of their genetic connection to the serpent gods. Again, the same recurring theme going way back. And so what you have is people put into positions of power, these bloodlines with this DNA corruption, and they're actually possessed and their mental and emotional processes controlled, not much emotionally, by these interspace entities. And so what happens is, on top of these pyramids of power in these various countries, you have basically the same entities manipulating events. And these buggers don't go to war, do they? They play off the people against each other. And so often these conflicts here are just for the movie. They're not in conflict at all. They are answering to the same agenda. And so you have the people played off against each other in war, and they're orchestrating it. I have a simple way of stopping all war. All you have to do is make it a law that anyone that declares war has to fight on the front line from day one. Finish. Over. I mean, if George W. Bush was on the front line in Iraq when the first bullet was fired, he'd be under a bed in Houston when the second bugger went off, wouldn't he? No, playing their game. And it's interesting, the Disney organization, a lot of this stuff is put out in really kind of different ways through the media and various things. And I watched this Disney film, Monsters, Inc., with my son, and I went along, just a kind of children's thing, and I sat there and watched it, and I started getting closer and closer to the edge of my seat. If you haven't seen Monsters, Inc., again with the Illuminati Disney Corporation, the story is this: there are these monsters in this monster world, but they don't have an energy source. So what they have to do is get the energy source from the human world. So in the power station in the monster world, all these doors are brought down and put in front of them, symbolic, I would suggest, of these interdimensional gateways, which you can move between dimensions if you know what you're doing. And these monsters then all line up and they walk through these doors. And as they walk through the door, they walk into a child's bedroom. And their job is to make the child terrified, and as the child screams, they catch the scream, the fear energy, in this tube, and they go back to the monster world and plug it into the power station, and it powers the monster world. Well, from what I understand, that's pretty much what goes on in this sense. Incidentally, who's the hero? The all-seeing eye. I love it. And in The Matrix, the first Matrix movie, and this is a theme that I've been picking up, why do they do this? Why do they manipulate humanity? What's it about? And in the movie, the first movie, The Matrix, of course, one of the themes was, major themes, was that the controlling force manipulating the Matrix was using the energy of human beings as its power source. Again, this recurring theme, which has come up in my research again and again. The Morpheus character says they have turned the human being into one of these. Now, what I understand is the power source in this interspace plane, this heaven between heavens, that empowers them is human fear. That's what it is. And so they manipulate through these bloodlines war, horror, famine, all the things that generate enormous amounts of fear. That's what the whole game is, turning the human race into a power station, generating fear energy which can be absorbed and used to empower them. Otherwise, they can't operate where they are. So these guys manipulate the wars and the horrors and the suffering and therefore the fear and the stress and all the rest of it. And they turn the people basically into batteries or generators, generating the fear that empowers the manipulators just beyond the 5 sense level of human existence. And to hold us in this reality, this conditioned reality, to keep us from understanding the game, they have created what has become known as the Matrix. It is an illusory world that we are manipulated to believe is real, but is actually not. It's simply an illusion of our minds. And what more and more people are going through, and that's what happened to me in 1990, 91, when I was all over the bloody Wogan show and stuff. Symbolically in the Matrix movie, there were 3 stages with the Neo character. And interestingly, if you play with the words Neo, it becomes one, the oneness. Once you become the oneness, you start to see things that you can't when you're in disconnected illusion. First is to explain that you're a slave. You're a slave, Neo. You were born into bondage. And that which controls you, the Matrix, is all around you. What you see, touch, and taste when you pay your taxes, when you do this, when you do that. It's all the Matrix. Then there is the decision to, hey, I want to be free of this. something I decided back in the late 80s, early 90s, and then you go through the process of transformation. And I know from experience, and it was more extreme with me, it can be amazingly painful and can blow your life apart. But once the debris settles, your life is far better than it was before. It's like the veil lifts. It's like sitting in a room with no windows all your life, and people are telling you this is what it is, this is life, this is reality, and then someone whips the roof off and you look up. Whoa! And something like this goes on. Ah! They're lying to us. Oh my God! Because you can start to see things you couldn't see before.